Have you ever noticed how, no matter how much you achieve, some part of you still waits for permission, as if the real adult hasn't arrived yet? You can lead teams, love women, even raise children, and yet when the pressure hits, something small inside you still wants someone else to take responsibility. The bills, the failures, the choices. There's a silent wish that somebody older, stronger, wiser will come fix it. But no one comes. And if you keep waiting, your life begins to stall. Every man at some point must face the death of the boy within him, not because the boy was bad, but because he cannot rule a man's life. What Jung called individuation is not self-improvement. It's a funeral. It is the moment when the boy's world-view dies so that something larger, steadier, and more responsible can finally stand in his place. Today, I want to talk about that death. Not the violent kind, not the rejection of innocence or joy, but the transformation of energy from dependency into sovereignty. Because until that happens, your outer life will always mirror your inner confusion. Relationships that collapse under pressure, careers that feel directionless, anger that comes from nowhere, and a sense that manhood is something you're pretending at rather than living from. 1. What it actually is and what it isn't. Let's start with the truth. The death of the boy is not about suppressing your sensitivity, killing your playfulness, or rejecting your emotions. Those qualities are the gold hidden within him. What must die is not his heart, but his control. The boy inside you is the one who believes life should be fair, that love should be unconditional, that comfort means safety, and that someone else is responsible for your pain. These were adaptive beliefs when you were small. They helped you survive environments where you had little control. But as an adult, they become prisons. They create a life where you are always reacting to reality instead of shaping it. The boy says, if I work hard, people will finally see me. The man says, I will work because it aligns with my purpose, not because I crave applause. The boy says, I can't bear being alone. The man says, solitude is where I remember who I am. The boy fears rejection because he confuses it with annihilation. The man knows rejection is information, not a verdict on his worth. The death of the boy is not the loss of feeling. It's the gain of structure. It's when tenderness learns discipline. It's when emotion finds form. It's when energy becomes direction. The boy lives for potential. The man lives for action. The boy reacts from fear. The man responds from center. The boy craves approval. The man offers presence. This is why Jung said that the journey toward wholeness always involves a descent into the underworld, because the childish parts of you will resist surrender. They will cry, manipulate, bargain. They will remind you of your trauma, your fatigue, your unfair past, and you must listen with compassion, but you cannot hand them the steering wheel again. 2. How it appears in ordinary life. You can tell the boy still rules when your emotional responses feel disproportionate to the moment, when criticism from a colleague ruins your entire day, or a small disagreement with your partner floods you with rage or shame. The boy cannot distinguish between threat and discomfort. Everything feels existential to him. You can see him when you procrastinate important tasks, not because you're lazy, but because somewhere in you, authority still feels unsafe. Maybe your father's voice was unpredictable, or your teachers used shame instead of guidance. So now even self-discipline feels like oppression. You can see him when you overcompensate, overwork, overtrain, overexplain, because deep down you're still trying to prove that you're finally enough. And you can see him when you withdraw, convincing yourself that numbness is peace, when really it's avoidance. The boy says, if I don't feel anything, I can't be hurt. The man says, If I don't feel anything, I can't be alive. You don't meet this inner child in therapy sessions alone. You meet him in your tone when you're criticized, in your impulse to defend when you could listen, in your exhaustion after chasing validation, and in the loneliness that follows your victories. 3. Origins and the boy who stayed. No man chooses this consciously. The boy remains because he was needed. He was the one who adapted to keep you safe, the diplomat who learned to read every shift in your parents' tone, the joker who diffused tension, the perfectionist who avoided punishment, the quiet one who learned that disappearing was safer than disappointing. In Jungian language, this boy becomes part of your persona, the mask you wear to earn love and avoid pain. But behind the mask, he stays small, scared, and frozen at the age of your first great confusion. If your father was absent, the boy learned to invent strength, to fake certainty until it became a habit. If your father was harsh, the boy learned compliance and called it goodness. If your mother was wounded or overprotective, the boy learned to soothe others before himself and called it love. Each of these strategies worked then. They saved you. But now they cost you. Because the adult world does not reward adaptation, it rewards authenticity. There's a moment every man faces when he realizes that the voice he obeys inside his head, the one urging him to be liked, to avoid conflict, to please, to delay, isn't the voice of wisdom. It's the echo of a frightened boy who hasn't yet realized the war is over. 4. Contact without collapse. So how do you face him? You don't lecture him. You don't exile him. You meet him the way you would meet a younger brother who's been waiting in the dark. You say, I know why you stayed. You did what you had to do, but I'm here now. Contact doesn't mean regression. It means recognition. You can't become whole by pretending you were never wounded. You become whole by giving the wound context. When you feel panic, ask, how old is this feeling? When you feel rage, ask, who am I protecting right now? When you feel shame, ask, who taught me this was unworthy? The goal isn't to silence him, but to let him rest. Because when the boy finally trusts that the man can carry life with structure, boundaries, clarity, he stops fighting. In dreams, Jung observed this as the moment when a man meets a child figure who either transforms or disappears. The psyche dramatizes what the conscious mind resists, that growth is not a linear ascent, but a cycle of deaths and births. The boy dies only when the man is born enough to hold what he could not. 5. Containment before expression. The modern world worships expression but forgets containment. The boy vents, the man holds. This doesn't mean repression, it means integration. When anger rises, the boy shouts to be seen. The man breathes to stay clear. When sadness comes, the boy seeks rescue. The man allows grief without drowning. When desire ignites, the boy chases pleasure. The man channels energy into creation. Containment is the vessel that turns chaos into character. You can feel it in presence, that unmistakable steadiness of a man who isn't ruled by his emotions but doesn't hide them either. That's what real power feels like. It doesn't flare, it radiates. 6. Consequences of avoidance versus integration. When the boy is never faced, he becomes the saboteur. He hijacks relationships, demanding that your partner play parent instead of equal. He wrecks discipline because it feels like punishment. He turns leadership into performance, generosity into appeasement, strength into burnout. You will see the boy's fingerprints everywhere, in the argument you can't let go of, in the apology you never make, in the dream you keep postponing. Avoidance creates repetition. Integration creates momentum. The men who never outgrow the boy are easy to spot. They confuse freedom with the absence of commitment, power with domination, success with validation, and love with rescue. Their charisma burns bright but leaves ashes. But the men who face him, who allow the boy to die and be remembered, they move differently. There's a quiet finality in their presence, a groundedness that doesn't need proving. They can love without clinging, lead without pretending, and suffer without collapsing. 7. Archetypal framing, the king and the boy. In Jung's structure, the boy is not erased. He is integrated into the archetype of the king. The king is not the destroyer of innocence, but its guardian. He keeps the child's vitality, but tempers it with responsibility. He holds both laughter and law. When the king archetype awakens, your energy reorganizes. Purpose replaces impulse. Blessing replaces control. Boundaries replace performance. The boy wants admiration. The king offers protection. The boy wants to be seen. The king wants to see clearly. The boy dreams of being served. The king serves. You can feel this shift in the body. Your voice lowers. Your movement slow. Your gaze steadies. You no longer need to dominate to feel safe. The throne is not above others. It's inside yourself. In myth, the boy's death is often accompanied by a symbolic sacrifice, a fall, a wound, an exile. In Jungian terms, this is the moment of psychic reorganization. The psyche demands balance. What was once externalized approval, power, fatherhood must now be internalized. And from that inner center, a man begins to radiate order. 8. Responsibility and witness. Every true initiation ends the same way, alone, because responsibility at its core is solitude, not loneliness, but the recognition that no one can live your life for you. The mature man stops blaming his father not because the father was perfect, but because he no longer needs him to be. He stops resenting his mother not because she was faultless, but because he can finally mother his own inner life. He stops waiting for the world to hand him meaning and begins to create it himself. Still, even the king needs witnesses, not fans, not followers, brothers, men who tell the truth, who can look at him and say, you're drifting, or you're hiding, or you're right where you need to be, because without witness, power decays. Without accountability, the king becomes the tyrant or the weakling. So find the men who remind you of your standards. Speak honestly with them, not perfectly, reliably. Closing benediction. There comes a time when a man must bury the boy inside him, not with contempt, but with gratitude. The boy was never your enemy. He was your beginning. He carried the spark that made you care, imagine, hope. But now it is your turn to carry him, as memory, as strength, as warmth. The death of the boy is not the end of your softness. It's the beginning of your sovereignty. When the boy dies, the man finally breathes without waiting for permission. When the boy dies, love stops being a transaction and becomes an offering. When the boy dies, life stops being something to win and becomes something to serve. So if you feel lost or hollow or restless, you are not failing. You are being called. You are standing at the threshold of your own initiation. Step forward, bury the boy with honor, and then, with calm eyes and steady hands, begin the next chapter of your life. Be that man. Not perfectly, reliably, begin.